As I've recently gotten through all of The Realm Reborn, it's almost my moral obligation to sit down and talk about the game so far, as the experiences and feelings are still fresh in my mind. My overall impression is that the game is fantastic and different to other MMOs on the market in its entirety, but I'm going to try and break it down into sections in order to cover all the aspects of the game. If you happen to be a sprout yourself, or just thinking about whether or not you should jump into Final Fantasy XIV, rest assured that this is a no-spoiler video, containing none of the key story elements and cinematics. If you don't want to see any footage though, it's still safe to listen to, as most footage is simply a placeholder and won't give you any particular info, so feel free to alt-tab as well. My name is Ivona from momsden.com, and if this is your first time on my channel, subbing is a good idea. I do simple MMO guides for classes, dungeons, raids, and collectibles, and I currently cover all things Final Fantasy XIV. If you enjoy easy in-game wins and videos that don't waste your time, you're in the right place. I also livestream on this channel quite a bit, so if you'd like to get to know an amazing FF community, you're welcome to drop by and say hi in the chat. The first and most important aspect of FF14 I'd like to talk about is of course the story. Calling the ARR storytelling a fantastic piece of work is an understatement, and I absolutely am giving it a 10 out of 10. Some of the main storyline quests do feel like they could be sending you on a goose chase less often, but I think a part of me feeling that way is because I've been waiting to reach the finale of the story so badly. The dialogues are immersive, the mysteries and plot twists are set up in an unpredictable and exciting way, the face expressions are not overly expressed, yet they capture the emotion in a realistic, satisfying manner, and the best part about all of it is that your character feels like they're an actual part of the game. The NPCs grow to like you and you fall in love with them completely. Well, most of them, and some of the ones that you meet are just proper scumbags, but that's up to you to discover. The story has kept me wanting to log in after even the most tiring days, having me walk on thin ice all the time and looking behind my back waiting for betrayal, heartbreak, or just a proper disaster coming my way. I'm not going to spoil any of that, but if these things are what you're looking for in an MMO, you'll be very satisfied with playing through Realm Reborn. Another thing is the character growth, for both characters in the story and yourself. I think this is a very important element of A Realm Reborn because certain characters with a bunch of screen time get to grow a lot and mature throughout the story. The only reason why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 is because I wanted to see some of my favorite characters get more of that time and grow along with me. But this is a purely subjective matter, as the characters who were meant to grow and change did so in the most fascinating way. Their narrative, emotional development, and the change in how they make decisions are something that's worth paying attention to while playing. And even if you don't spot these tiny things for the first time, watching someone play through it again or going through the important cutscenes in your journal can help you enjoy the character development even more. The next thing is the social and roleplay aspect. Do keep in mind that my subjective ratings are based on the experience so far, and they in no way represent the full state of the game. The social side of the game is absolutely incredible. People are everywhere, chatting, emoting in the general chat, helping each other do content, admiring the glamour, and engaging in all sorts of roleplay. One of the most fun things I've been experiencing are the concerts in the city-states, organized by players and enjoyed by everyone who finds themselves there at the time. It makes the game feel alive, allows you to connect with people, talk about the similar experiences or pure enjoyment you're feeling, and just feeling like you're somewhere else in a world where you have your own place, where you can actually stop and smell the roses without thinking about chores or continuous progression in order to not fall behind. It is insane how good it is. The only reason why I'm giving it a 9 out of 10 right now is because I'm still going through the MSQ, and being on that somewhat lonely journey makes you less likely to just hang out where the other people are and participate in the social events and random occurrences, as you want to experience the story as well. Finding a healthy balance between the two is a bit tricky, but I'm sure this becomes a lot better in the later stages of the game when you have a bunch of time to do whatever you want, knowing you don't have a big pile of quests to do in order to unlock the full game content. The people you do see and interact with are the main reason for this high of a rating though, as the community is extremely welcoming, non-toxic, helpful, and overall very pleasant to be around. My only hope is that we can all keep this model of behavior as the game grows in order to preserve preserve the magical experience we now have for the generations of players to come. The graphics and the overall art style may not be everyone's cup of tea, but to me it feels like a live world, fully immersive, reacting, and very cozy. For some of you that may be used to other styles of MMOs, like World of Warcraft or some other game, it may be a weird transition at first, but it literally took me a couple of hours to get used to my new home, and after that I never looked back after years and years, and wow. The reason for giving it a 9 out of 10 is because I did notice some textures and objects that stand in the middle of very high-res things designed at the same time as those lower-res ones that really stand out. And they kind of remind you of how old the game actually is. This was not very common, and I'd usually find it happen with the clothes on some NPCs or some random mobs in the open world, but it didn't bother me all that much, simply because the rest looks utterly incredible. So when it comes to the combat system, you're gonna hear a lot about the game feeling really sluggish at the beginning with big global cooldowns and not a lot of stuff to do in between. But this has been so minuscule and unimportant that I'm not even going to take it into consideration when giving it a rating, leaving it a 10 out of 10. This is again subjective, and this kind of pacing is what suits me personally and may not be for everyone. But I feel like I had plenty of time to learn my class and actually look around and think about movement. I don't spend any of my time thinking about which button to spam next, as the combat feels realistic enough for you to be able to make slow and conscious decisions about when to use your cooldown abilities and not just cast spells mindlessly. The moderate pacing of the game allows you to look at your enemies and your party members without missing out on the combat experience due to being just overly concerned with spell refreshing, cooldowns, expirations, and parsing in general, as you're still leveling, and even though you're trying your best, your experience is on the priority list and it feels great. The open world content in Realm Reborn is admittedly not as exciting as I thought it would be, so I'll give it a 7 out of 10. This is probably completely my fault, as I haven't yet been dealing with stuff like treasure hunts and beast tribe reputations that probably make the whole thing a lot better. If you're a beginner and you're just going through your MSQ, the only thing that's directly in front of you are the fates, the left quests, and the guild hests, and they're not as exciting because there's no real incentive to do them or even unlock them straight away. The most time I spent doing my fates was when I was collecting the seals for my Chocobo license and later farming seals through company lev quests to raise my ranks within the Grand Company, and I haven't gone back to do these open world activities since. Also, I'm looking forward to diving into all the side quests, as they're probably full of lore and fun things to do, but I just haven't gotten around to them, so I can't objectively rate them either. As I said, this was just me, and I'm sure the game has a lot more to offer when you're not overly consumed with the main storyline, and I can see how my rating is a bit biased as I'm still going through my MSQ and not going around the world killing stuff. The music in the game is one of the best, most fulfilling experiences I have ever had in an MMO, and I could give it 100 out of 10 if I could. And I can, because it's my review and I make my own rules. When you're in a raid or a trial, some soundtracks are so distractingly beautiful. They can cause you to wipe your group because you'll start dancing and will forget about what you need to do. With the special mount music, the music rolls, and the content that has its special tunes, you can see how much accent has been put on the player's audio experience in this game, and it is so strong that makes you not want to play your own playlists while playing FF14 because you'll just end up missing out on such a big part of the game. When it comes to the difficulty of the game, I'll give it a 10 out of 10 because it allows everyone to coexist in a single world and be satisfied. There are plenty of difficulty modes, and it isn't just easy or hard, which allows even the most casual players to experience the content in its entirety, while giving the hardcore players an enormous challenge to work towards. I'm a big supporter of this kind of system, and I think it makes a lot of initially casual players feel motivated to progress in the game, as they weren't rejected for their beginner skills at first, which is a win for literally everyone involved. Okay, let's talk about the whole MogStation store thing. This isn't an actual part of the game, so I wondered if I should even talk about it, but when you're buying the game or managing your account or doing anything outside of the gameplay, you can't bypass it. For me, buying the actual game wasn't such a big issue, but it was more complicated than any of the other games I've purchased. I'm giving it a 4 out of 10, just because the website looks like it jumped straight out of 2006, with very little intuitive things about it to make your being on there easier and more likely for you to spend money. I found the bar menu awkwardly put together and confusing, so much so that I had to click through all the menu options to figure out what happens when I go there. I was especially disappointed with the recruit a friend system, where you get a code that you essentially don't know you'll be getting the first time you're trying to create one. If you happen to accidentally exit the page or refresh without saving it, which happened to me as I didn't see the code on there, you'll have to wait 3 more hours to generate a new code to send to your friend. I'm gonna be honest, I don't know what the reasons are for this, but having a referral link or the code be sent to your email seems a lot more simple than this. Overall, the items from the MOG store are fun and gorgeous, and they don't give you any in-game advantage, which is good, but if Square feels like making more money in the future, having the website look like it's at least 10 years into the future would go a long way. The communication with the devs is definitely on my list of things to talk about, and giving it another 100 out of 10 doesn't mean to diminish the 10/10s I've previously mentioned. It simply means that the way Final Fantasy development team, especially Naoki Yoshida, are handling the communication and transparency behind the game dev is surreal. As a player and a paying customer, I've never been treated so kindly with humbleness, understanding, plain non-corporate language, and respect as I've been feeling as a Final Fantasy XIV player. This is a one-of-a-kind experience, making you truly want for Yoshida to have a Philosopher's Stone somewhere in his pockets and live forever, as the way he's been managing the FF community speaks volumes about their core values. After watching the no-clip documentary about how the game has become a literal phoenix, I've gained massive respect for the way things are being done on the FF14 team, and I'm excited to be where I'm at today. As per the overall performance of the game, it's been a very smooth experience for me with no significant lags, crashes, textures breaking, or anything that breaks the immersion of the game whatsoever. I'll give it a 9 out of 10, and this may not be fully justified as it might be to some issues on my end, but I've noticed that during the peak hours, having your NPCs, quest givers, or any other players in the world for that matter show up around you can sometimes take a bit of time, sometimes making me feel confused as I would see the quest sign on the map but no NPC inside, making me think they're upstairs or downstairs. I will be addressing this issue on my end to see if I can resolve it in any way, but if you haven't experienced any of that, the game is definitely a 10 out of 10 performance-wise. When it comes to the dungeons, I'm actually really loving the experience. Not just because of their design, but because of the community, who has been very welcoming and supportive to me as a Sprout tank. I've been learning along the way, even though this is my very first time tanking, and I didn't have the anxiety of being kicked out of the group for messing up. There was only one particular incident at like 5 in the morning when I couldn't sleep and I queued a dungeon I've never been to before, so there was a veteran healer who refused to say a single word and instead kept pulling myself and all of us to various corners of the room where he thought we should stand. Needless to say, it demotivated me for further honing my skills as a tank in that particular dungeon, but most of my experiences were overall good. I like the interesting and unique mechanics of the bosses, but I'll give it a 9 out of 10, as some dungeons just aren't particularly memorable, especially the ones that look like they're in caves. Most of them I was impressed with, but some of them were just very dark and looked like a tunnel map that's there to just be run through and forgotten about. The trials, though, are an absolute 10 out of 10 so far. Each one has had a gorgeous boss, beautiful music, interesting mechanics, they have very little to no trash, they don't last long, and are a crucial part of the story, which is just awesome. My favorite ones were definitely the King Moogle, Garuda, and the Leviathan trial, each with awesome tunes and actual mechanics to learn and overcome, and I have nothing negative to say about them at all. I was a bit less impressed with the Alliance raids, and my honest rating would probably be a solid 8 out of 10. Again, this is totally biased, as I went into them as a new tank without any particular knowledge because I was afraid of the spoilers, and I would have probably had a better experience if I had looked up the mechanics before going there for the first time. Also, I was a bit confused about the whole "you're part of your alliance and should act accordingly" thing, which made me go with another alliance more than once because I didn't know better. On the other hand, the bosses were really cool and interesting to learn about, and I'm looking forward to improving this rather personal review as I'm growing from a total noob to, well, less of a noob. Another thing to talk about is the so-called endgame, and that's Glamour. I'm giving the system a 9.5 out of 10, simply because getting into it, understanding the armory chest, and the whole Glamour plate thing has been made needlessly complicated in my opinion. Maybe it's just me, but the first time I tried to figure out where to put my Glamour gear, how to create a plate, use my Glamour prisms, dye my gear, and acknowledge pieces of gear that don't let you equip gear on some other slots, it took me almost half an hour to understand and learn about all of this. However, the Glamour game in Final Fantasy XIV is on a very high level, with some extremely unique items and pieces of gear that I couldn't even imagine equipping in other MMOs. Some pieces are so beautiful and creative, even the ones you get on lower levels, it makes you feel like you can be anything and anyone you want, and I can see myself developing a strong long-term addiction for this kind of thing. Speaking of addiction, the feature I've absolutely been loving is the gold saucer and pretty much everything in it. It's a shiny 10 out of 10 for me for this place. That has made me feel like home more than any other inn I've ever logged out of. As a card game enthusiast and an ex-Hearthstone streamer and competitor, Triple Triad has fueled my passion for card collecting and in-game tournaments, that we never got to see in Hearthstone by the way, and I've been wasting my hours away on card collecting, learning about the rules, challenging my friends, and just having massive stupid amount of fun. I've recently gotten myself into things like Chocobo racing and Verminions, and I'm usually the kind of person who ignores minigames inside of a game whenever I can help it. Not in Final Fantasy XIV though, as this place has become my second home and a favorite chill zone for when I'm so tired I can barely move my mouse. Yet another unique feature is the Palace of the Dead, that I didn't explore as much as I've been wanting to at all, but in my case it's hours and hours of fun and progression that's sitting there waiting for me to find some time to do it. I don't know how I'd rate it if I was going alone, but with my Palace buddy I've been having a blast and I'm throwing a 9 out of 10 on it. The fact that I'm not giving it a 10 is because this is an enormous feature, tucked behind a blue quest that isn't all that obvious to many players, so any Sprout can easily miss out on it because they don't even know this kind of thing exists. There's not a lot of hype for it, at least not in the Sprout community, so it would be great if the game would somehow make you become aware of its existence in a slightly more invasive way. For all the WoW refugees who haven't checked out this awesome feature yet, in a few words, it's the older brother of Torghast and everything Torghast should have been and has been wanting to be. No mandatory character progression, gorgeous awards, progressive system, and an actual challenge, and just overall a very cool place to be. As biased as this review was, it's also a bit incomplete. I can't at this time properly review PvP as I'm a noob, I can't review player housing because I'm poor, and I can't for the life of me review crafting as I've been too afraid to start with it, mostly so I don't get dragged into it and never finish the MSQ, as I have an addictive personality that easily falls for these things. As I'll be doing these fully biased reviews for the further content as well, I'll try to cover more of this stuff, but if you're a Sprout like me right now, you might not even care about these features at the moment anyway. MSQ is king, right? And that's all I've got for you today. I hope you enjoyed the video and hopefully you found at least somewhat helpful for whatever the reason was you clicked on it. I'd love to hear what you think about Realm Reborn, so drop your thoughts in the comments and be sure to drop by my next live stream so we can have a chat about it. Massive thanks to everyone supporting the content here on YouTube or on Patreon, as they're the ones making sure I can create content full time. With that said, I'll see you in my next video. Good luck and bye bye.